Hey, good morning. I hope you're doing well. A couple of announcements I want to kind of add my 2 cents to before we get started this morning. First of all, to remind you that the group sign-up is happening right now. Over 150 some odd folks have already signed up. A couple of groups have closed. Another group's been added. Listen, this is where you connect beyond the big dark room. This is where you find friends and you just find people to discuss the topic with. It's worth an hour of your life to do this, so prayerfully consider. That's all I'm asking you to do, is prayerfully consider being a part of the small group ministry of the church. I think that it will be something that you'll find really very helpful to you. Now, all morning long, I have been chasing Buddy and Joan in the services, so I've never been in the same service with them until this very moment. And I just wanted to take a moment to say, you all need to understand the friends that Buddy and Joan have been to alive. Because they have gone to bat for our church on numerous fronts when things were more difficult to go to bat for us on, and when we were making so many changes. And then we're trying to figure out how to locate. When I heard Buddy's comments on the video feed, we were trying to relocate here and how to make it happen because people were coming and everything was growing, but we couldn't make it happen because we couldn't sell our building. Well, under Buddy's leadership, the district stepped in and took care of that for us, allowing us to build when we did. So not only have they led our district well, but I want you to know they've been a friend to their own church family where their membership is and where they worship. And I want them to hear me tell you, I love you, and I value being in ministry with you together. So would you give them a little love just a moment? Just, I love you. Thank you very much. Hey, listen, one other thing I want to tell you is this. If you don't get the updates that I send out on Friday, you can sign up for those on the bulletin. But if you don't get those, we're going to talk about sexuality here this morning. So if you brought your children in here and you don't want them to hear about this from Tom, I'm going to say a prayer and you can take them out during prayer. If you brought your spouse and you don't want them to hear about it from Tom, take them out. Now, you'll be glad to know this won't be a how-to seminar. This will actually be something the Scriptures teach. So we're going to have a word of prayer. If you need to kind of vacate this room and enjoy the children's ministry, by all means do that. But let's have a word of prayer, and then we'll get started. Lord, thank you so much for your goodness to us. Thank you for this time of worship. And Lord, watching these guys lead this morning, so many of them were not feeling well in the worship team, and they led so strongly. I just thank you for their commitment to this church, and more importantly, their commitment to you. I pray now, Father, as we kind of jump into this incredible topic, that you would hide me in your cross, and that all of us, Lord, no matter what background we're bringing in here, all of us would feel encouraged in this area and would come out of hiding in so many different arenas here, and that wouldn't be dominated by shame or regret. So offer all that to you. In your name we pray. Amen. Well, as you picked up from the video, this series has kind of been pretty simple. We've been talking about a very simple question, but the question is one that's quite significant, because the question, we believe, if we asked ourselves the question in 2014, then maybe our list of regret would have been less, or would have been smaller. The stresses we have would have been smaller. And as we think about going into 2015, if we took every opportunity, every decision we had to make, every kind of relationship situation, we asked ourselves the question, we think that 2015 would have less stress, would have less conflict, and we would actually maybe thrive a bit more. And the question is very simple. The question is, what's the wise thing for me to do? In this situation, in this scenario, in this relationship, with these finances, what's the wise thing for me to do? Now, here's the thing you need to understand. We're not all the same in this room. And so what that means is the answer to what the wise thing for me to do may be different in this group than it is in this group. Because everybody comes into this room with unique backgrounds and unique presence and unique futures. And so we added this little disclaimer to what's the wise thing for us to do, or clarifier, I should say, and it's this. In light of what's happened in my past, and in light of what's going on today in my present, and in light of my future hopes and dreams, what is the wise thing for me to do? And so we've been looking at what it would mean to live like wise people. And if you've missed any of these series or these messages, they're all online. They're also all on the church app. If you want to download the app, by the way, all the notes from the messages, they're all on that church app. You can follow there in little sermon notes, so they're all written down, and you can follow along if you want them. But all this discussion is basically based on a verse we found in the book of Ephesians. Paul's writing the church at Ephesus, and this is what he says. He says, we are all to be imitators of God. We were once children of darkness, now we're children of light. So we're all to be imitators of God. And then it uses these terms, like dearly loved children. That's then the verse starts. So that's the cause. Here comes the effect. Therefore, because we're all to be imitators of God, because we're all dearly loved children, therefore, be careful how you walk. Fascinating verse right there. Be careful how you walk, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. Now, for Christians in the room, the conversation's vitally important because we all claim to follow Jesus. And Jesus lifted the idea of Christianity beyond this system of what is right and wrong, beyond a system of just morality. That's why there are people that never darken a church door that act like Christians do. Because it's not just about morality. It's not here's the list of do's and here's the list of don'ts. Jesus actually lifted it beyond a list and into a relationship. And Jesus elevated the way that we live far above what's right and wrong behavior and actually dropped it into the arena of what's motivating us and what our attitudes are toward different things in our culture. Are you tracking what I'm saying? And so Jesus did that for us. And so after this verse, Paul begins to offer up numerous ways. You can read this for yourself. All around this verse, numerous ways to live as dearly loved children. And he gives several examples. In one of the arenas, Paul addresses is the one I want to apply our principle to this morning. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 3. But among you, there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality. Now, what I want you to do is, for a moment, I want you to begin to think about your moments of regret. These aren't moments, because I'm getting ready to drop an incredibly intelligent statement on you. You're going to want to all get your pen and pencil ready, because this is going to blow your mind, I promise. I'm just kidding, it won't be that intelligent, but I mean for it to be, so I'm building it up on the front end. Here's what I want you to do. Don't think about the regrets that have actually happened to you, that you didn't control. I'm talking about regrets that you chose. You think about, okay, I wish I would have never done that. I wish I'd never slept with him or slept with her, or I wish I'd never let that relationship get to where it was, or wish I'd never been caught, whatever your pile of regret is. You think about this, because here's something I learned about regrets this week. One of the things that we can all agree on is in our area of greatest regret, we were there. I know, sometimes I amaze myself at some of this stuff. And the reason I say that is, listen, I'm tired of people blaming everybody else. We can blame someone else, we can blame mom and daddy, we can blame our upbringing, we can blame our circumstances, but ultimately, when we all caved into temptation, you were there. We were all there, which leads not altogether the same temptation, but we were all part of it, which leads to that'd be creepy. But what leads to this question then is, why did I do it? Why did I crave into that temptation? And I came to one conclusion: I'm dumb. And I feel the same about you. You'll be glad to know. Why did we do it? We were there. Why did we do it? We knew that it wasn't going to be a good thing. Why did we cave into that particular temptation? And I got to thinking about this because I'm a smart person at times, and I was thinking, why did I do that? Why did I cave into that area of greatest regret? And as I reflect back on that time in my life, one of the most repeated phrases that I said, by the way, it's one that often comes to my office door, and here's what people say. See if this sounds as truth for you. There's nothing wrong with it. Man, I could slap that statement up against anything. There's nothing wrong with it. Have you ever noticed that your bad moral decisions were usually the result of a series of unwise decisions that there was nothing wrong with? I don't know if you're tracking with me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to give you an example. Let's just say it starts out this way. A couple decides, or maybe not a couple that's together, but two friends, let's say, they decide to text one another. And they just text each other privately. It's just between the two of them. They're co-workers, and this is kind of what happens. And then they start after texting for a certain amount of time. There's nothing wrong with texting. Everybody knows that. We all text. It's what we do. And then there's a certain amount of time we think they're at work, and a project comes up. And the project requires them to work over lunch. And so the two of them go together over lunch while all the texting is still taking place in order to accomplish and to finish a certain project. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just lunch. People do working lunches all the time. But the projects are actually growing a little more demanding, and so they find themselves needing to have a working supper lunch that involves 5 of the people working on the same project, but the people forget to invite the other 3 that are supposed to be working on the project. And so all the texting is going on, and lunch has been enjoyed, and now they find themselves at supper. It's not a problem, though, Tom. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just texting. It's just food. We're in a people place. There's nothing weird's going to happen over the roast beef or whatever. It's all going to be fine. There's nothing wrong with this. And then they find themselves eventually getting to the point where they have to work late, but it's not a problem because they actually like being together. We get so much done. We work well together. There's nothing wrong with it. We have to pay for our job. We got to pay our bills. We're just trying to provide the best living for our family. There's nothing wrong with this. It's just 2 professionals working together. But when you find yourselves working late, then all of a sudden the conversation even becomes more intimate, and you find yourself confiding in one another. And this often happens by talking about our children. Man, our children are doing this. Hey, my child's doing the same thing. I'm so sorry you're going through that. You know what? I just wish my spouse would. And then you find yourself texting and eating lunch and eating supper and working late and now confiding in one another. And now you're talking about the most intimate of things. Maybe you're having some thoughts that aren't right. Even those of us that are males and have no idea of intimacy at all are beginning to sense something is not tracking. But there's really nothing wrong with this, Tom. Everybody needs someone to talk with. Why, it would be unchristian of me not to listen to what's actually happening in his marriage, in her marriage. Jesus wouldn't turn them away. Why should I? I actually think we are helping each other. And then as inevitably happens and the door is open wide, you begin talking about and confiding and listening in areas that are incredibly intimate and painful. And the next thing you know, tears are shed. And you're weeping with one another over hurt in your life. There's nothing wrong with this, Tom. Can a man or a woman be friends in our culture? What are we living in the 1900s? She's like a sister. He's like a brother. There's nothing wrong with that. And then you find yourself after a particularly intimate night of confiding and listening and tears, and you find yourself actually going to a point where you're getting ready to part paths and you lock eyes because of the intimacy that's been shared, and there's a hug that happens, and the hug that happens, and immediately when they're spread apart, the hug that happens, you lock eyes with one another, and then we pause. If this were a television show, what would you be thinking is getting ready to happen? And you'd be talking to the people on the television show because everybody talks to their TVs, right? Don't do it. Don't go in there with him. Or maybe if you like him, do it. Go ahead. Go on in there. That'd be fine. I know how everybody is. I know that's just the way it is. They don't go in there. Don't sleep with him. Don't sleep with her. You got a wife and family. You got a husband and family. Do you really want this to happen? Do you really? Because there's really nothing wrong, though, with the hug. Now, let me make this a little more personal. What if this scenario is you? Go ahead. look down the list just for fun. What if this scenario is you? Isn't it true that in the process here that we begin to lie to ourselves? We try to convince ourselves that nothing is wrong. But at the core of who you are, when you're alone, you find yourself using huge amounts of energy trying to quiet your own conscience. You're trying to believe a lie that you keep telling yourself. And then your friends and your family, they're all screaming into the screen of your life, back away, don't go there. But you lie to them as well. After all, there's nothing wrong with it. We're just friends. And in that moment, if you've ever been there, you realize something about yourself, something that you have the capability of doing, and it's this. You have the capability of not even being transparent with yourself. See, bad moral decisions are usually the result of a series of unwise decisions. And so this is what we do in the area of sexuality. Everybody. What we do is we become edge walkers. We experiment, we flirt, we play right on the edge of what is right and what is wrong. We let the gazes linger longer than they should. We let the texts go to places they should never go. And in this moment, if you've ever been there, you start wrestling on the inside. But here's something most of you know about this area and what you want to tell your children. When it comes to sexuality, once you cross the edge, you create extraordinary regret. So here's the question I have. If what the Bible says is true, if there's a God who loves me, and if there's a God who has a plan for my life, and if there's a God who supposedly made me in his image, and if there's a God who doesn't just have a plan for we, he's got a plan for me, each individual, what would you expect that God to say about sexuality? What would you expect that God to say? Because that's what I want to know. If he knew that Tom's unwise decisions would result in a pile of regret, what would God tell me? Paul writes another letter to the Corinthian church. I've always thought it was kind of comical that people named their church after Corinth, because those people are some jacked up people. You do not read Corinthians. I mean, I promise you it's better than anything you're going to see on television. In fact, there is so much sexual immorality in Corinth that they created a verb. They called it to Corinthianize to describe sexual immorality. When sexual immorality is named about where you live, that's a problem. And that's exactly what happened. They wanted to Corinthianize. Some of you are going to use that phrase this afternoon. But nonetheless, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12 starts this way. Everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. And I just want to pause here long enough to say something that's a whole nother message. It's a bad idea to assume that if something's not wrong, it is automatically right. Then Paul writes this to church people. Flee from sexual immorality. Now, the word flee is kind of critical for me because it's hard to know what it means to flee when we're surrounded by it. The shock factor in sexuality has been lost because we're accustomed to more and more kinds of perversion. And what's happening is we all know what is good for the people we love. We're just not sure if it's good for us. And so what that means is everybody in the room is struggling with being hypocritical. We do things that we would never want our children to do or our younger siblings to do. And as a result, we end up being hypocritical. We teach our kids one thing, but then we stay up late at night so we can watch another thing. That's hypocritical. We make marriage vows of giving ourselves to one person, but see nothing wrong with being entertained on our television screens and our movies by those who choose not to honor their vows. That's hypocritical. We want people we love to be modest. But then we go online to feed our addiction by viewing those who are anything but modest. Friends, that's hypocritical. And we've convinced ourselves in this sexually saturated culture that nothing is wrong anymore. People are experimenting with sex with friends and complete strangers, and their physical bond far surpasses their emotional bond. There's nothing wrong. It's my fantasy. There's nothing wrong. We were both willing. There's nothing wrong. It's private. If that's all true, then why does the Bible say what it says next after fleeing from sexual immorality? Because right after it says flee from sexual immorality, it says this in verse 18. All other sins the man commits are outside the body. But he who sins sexually sins against his own body. Now, let me kind of apologize. I think in an effort for the church to deal with the onslaught of sexual regret represented in this room and sanctuaries like this, we're sometimes guilty of trying to grace over the impacts of sexual sin. Listen, sexual sin has its own category in Scripture. It's not like every other sin, and we all know this because the repercussions from sexual sin just seem to stick around. Culture tells you it's just physical. Friends, culture is lying to us. And if you have any sexual sin in your history, you know culture lied to you. Now, let me be clear. Sexual sin does not have its own category because it's unforgivable. That's not what I'm saying. What's at stake here is not forgiveness. I would suggest what's at stake here are consequences. So now let me give you a little Tom opinion. If you don't like this, just tune it out. We'll come back in a minute to Scripture. You know why I think sexual sin has its own category in Scripture? It's because sexual sin is difficult for the individual to extend grace and forgiveness to him or herself. There is no condom for your soul. And that's why sexual sin is so tough. When you engage in sexual behavior that's not right, that's not part of your personal standards, you know regret is immediate. And you will spend a significant amount of time trying to figure out where to put that regret and trying to forgive yourself. And you all know that. That's why it's so quiet in this room right now. And Paul, he takes this whole idea of sexuality and he lifts it out of the context of just what is right and wrong. And he establishes an entirely new playing field. And this changed everything for me. He establishes a new path, a new ideal, a new hope, a new standard when it comes to our bodies and to sexuality. And Paul is getting ready to provide an entirely new paradigm for sexuality that the world has not even heard of. And it surpasses the temptation arena and puts the whole thing in relationship with God arena. 1 Corinthians 6, verse 18, flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. Do you not know your bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. Now watch this. You were bought at a price. Therefore, okay, cause, here comes the effect. Therefore, honor God with your bodies. Did you hear it? Because this is an entirely different thing than there's nothing wrong with it. This is entirely different than how much can I get away with? How close to the edge can I walk? That's no longer a game of what I can get away with. This is now about a relationship with our Heavenly Father. And in this incredible truth, God shows, listen, this is so important. Those of us that are holding on to sexual regret stuff, in this one truth, God shows not only the way to sexual purity, but also the way to the healing of sexual regret. So we tune in. And what Paul is saying is this: salvation for you, salvation for me came at a great price. Just because it's convenient today doesn't mean it was convenient for God. And our forgiveness was not cheap. And the greatest act of reconciliation the world has ever known, forgiveness is offered to us through the suffering, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, which means all those regret fuelers that you have burning inside of you, those are all forgiven just for the asking. This is a gift, an honor, a mercy, an opportunity, a get out of jail free card, a shame eraser, a freedom's cry that everybody on the planet can receive just for the asking. And Paul's saying, since we have that gift that we all just amened, why are we not honoring God with the gift? Why are we not going beyond what's right and wrong? How about honoring God with your body, with your love, with your desire, with your behavior, with your relationships, with your sexuality? You want healing from sexual mistakes? Paul says, start today by honoring God with your entire self, including your sexuality. Now, the question then, if you're like me, that you're wrestling with is, well, I was raised in a church that we never talked about sexuality. In fact, I think I might be sinning just sitting in this room right now. What does it mean to honor God with my sexuality? And I thought about honor, and I tried to come up with honor. I thought, we honor the flag, and we honor veterans and things like that, and honor mothers on Mother's Day and all this stuff. Got to thinking all that. And so I came up with an illustration. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I just want to share with you, and then you determine. But I want to give us a glimpse of honor. One of our neighbors in our neighborhood, their names are Bill and Mary. They're up in years. Great neighbors, great folks, and they're living this wonderful retired life, and then their life takes a turn that none of us in the room want. Mary starts having these little mini strokes, and she's slowly debilitated, and it debilitates her to the point where Mary's actually confined to a wheelchair. And as the strokes continued to happen, she could no longer control her limbs or her head, and she lost her ability to speak, but her mind was still there. Are you tracking? And we had this honor to watch Bill and Mary deal with all this. And I'm telling you, every evening, Bill would get Mary up out of the convalescent area there at their home and put her in a wheelchair. And Bill would push the wheelchair around the neighborhood, talking to Mary all the way, letting her visit with all the neighbors. I'm telling you, he did this every night for months. He'd push her around the neighborhood and talk to all of us, and we'd go down and see Bill and Mary. And I remember one night getting my kids, gathered them in the yard. It's kind of like we were looking at something that was so intimate we shouldn't be looking, but we couldn't pull our eyes away. And I said to them, I said, hey kids, you want to know what marriage is? Look at that. That's what marriage is. I was at Bill's house the morning Mary died. And I'm ashamed to tell you what I'm getting ready to tell you. But I thought there would be relief. He cared for her for months with nothing back. It had been a pain. And the man collapsed in my arms and just wept like a baby about how much he misses Mary. And that may sound so simple to you, but for me, it's this incredible picture of what it means to honor. So let me ask you, for a person with your past, for a person with your present, for a person with your future hopes and dreams, what would it look like for you to honor God with your body and your sexuality? To live wisely in this area. Now let me apply this to some places that are going to cause most of you to avoid me in the lobby. If you were dating someone And if your love is so special, then why don't you live in love like it's special? If you're dating someone, everything you give that person is a gift. Everything. One of the most precious gifts I've ever received from my wife was when we were dating and we were sitting on the back steps over there behind the gymnasium and hoping that she'd want to make out after. She didn't, and we didn't. It was early on in our relationship. In fact, it was very early on, just a week or so, and so I knew that that joke was off the table. But I remember we were going to pray together. And I remember when Lise grabbed my hand, and we held hands when we prayed. And then when we finished praying, she didn't let go. And I knew I was in. Guys, girls, please. That was such a gift to me that I still value 27 years later. Everything that you give is a gift. Everybody's edge walking. That's nothing special about that. You want to date like everybody else? Sure, give it all away to each other in a moment. That's fine. But don't dare think that you have a special love, because you don't. You're just doing what everybody else is doing. If your love is so distinct, then why don't you make it stand out from those that are around you? Pornography. Uh-oh. I wish I could say that the numbers inside the walls of the church are different than the numbers outside the walls of the church, but that'd just be a lie. Here's my question about pornography. Why don't you just make it impossible to go to those sites? What, are you playing a game? Do you really think there's nothing wrong? Do you really think that this isn't going to impact anybody in your home? And say, Tom, that's kind of tight, man. Why are you coming down so hard on me like that? Well, here's why. I have been there to pick the pieces up in a marriage where one caught the other. And I can go deeper than that. I have been there to try to put a family back together when the kid saw what dad was doing on the computer. Let me ask again, why are you playing this stupid, stupid game? This is a dark place. Get over yourself and get over your pride and pull in some accountability and get some software if you need it to protect yourself. One day you may be strong enough, but that day's not today. Stop playing with this. It's not honoring to God, and it's not honoring to those you love or to those you will one day love. Marriage. True love. Just thought you needed a comedy relief right there. That's why I gave that to you. You'll all have to breathe. Everybody sucked in and nobody was breathing right there. Tom, how do you make sure that you're honor Lise in your marriage? Well, I'll tell you one way. You ready, guys? You can write this down. The way that pornography is not an issue for me is that I have given my wife full access to every electronic device I own. My phone, my iPads, my computer, you name it, she can access it. You want to cure pornography? Done, right there. Yeah, but what about your office? Okay, let's talk about the office. Lord has blessed me with a godly woman as an assistant for the last 10 years. Beth Peterson has access to every electronic device I own. Tom, that's so stupid. It's over the top. Why would you dare do that? I'll tell you why. Because I don't want Lisa to ever wonder if somebody has replaced the hottest woman in my life. And they haven't. I don't want Lisa to wonder ever if she's being replaced by a bunch of pixels and images. I don't want her to fear. And she never has to. Have you offered that to your spouse? It's one of the ways we honor each other. Let me go a little deeper. In your marriage, why are you entertained by those shows? Why do you watch those movies? Why are you watching that TV series that feature all the emotional and physical entanglements I just drew up here on the board? Why are you embracing that in your life and in your marriage? Do you really think there's nothing wrong with it? Why do you put your kids in bed before watching the movie you two have selected? You see, part of the way I honor my marriage in this is I'm honoring my children. I don't want them to wonder about dad and about mom. I want them to expect from whomever they date that they too will be honored in such a way. Come on, am I alone here or are you with me? Because I don't want to mess in this area. Let me just do one more holiness preacher type thing and then I'll move on. Movies. Would you people listen to me for a moment? Just because Hollywood puts it out doesn't mean you should take it in. I mean, what in the world are we doing as Christians? We're going to see things. And here's the thing. There are some shows and movies I can't see because they don't honor my wife and they don't honor my children. Tom, you don't go see all the movies? No, I don't go see all the movies. What are you, stupid? Of course I'm not going to go see all the movies. I might run into you people there. I'm really going to be embarrassed if we go see that movie. So wait for the DVD like every other good Christian in America. My point is the same, friends. Listen, why are we honoring this and why in the world are we not talking about this? And I can hear you push back because I pushed back on myself this week. And the pushback is, Tom, this is dumb. You are being unreasonable. If my wife trusts me, she wouldn't have to look at my computer. And that's true, so why don't you let her? If my husband trusts me, he wouldn't have to look at my text. That's true. Why don't you let him? It's funny that most of the time we're pushing back on something for ourselves in a certain area of sexuality. We wouldn't make the same argument for a younger sibling. I'm going to go do this. No, you can't do that. If you chose to honor God with your sexuality, with your partners, your addiction, your media, your private behavior, do you really think you'd regret that a year from now? Maybe we gather back in the same room a year from now. Oh, doggone it. I wish I would have had one more sexual partner. That would have been awesome. Man, if I could have just seen one more naked picture on the internet, that would have been such a great year. No, here's what I suspect. I suspect if we had decided to honor God in this area a year from now, we would be singing praises and rejoicing. Tom, you live in preacher world, and I'm going to prove it to you. Because nobody on the planet does this. So come out of your little cemetery cloud there, and my response to you to this is so what? Nobody does it. Whoopie-doo-dah. What do you mean nobody does that? That's not an argument. That's a statement. That's a statement. Nobody does this. Do you know what the argument is? The argument is this. Nobody does this, and I want to be like everybody else. Now we're getting somewhere. Because now there's an argument on the table. Because reality is, you really don't want to be like everybody else. You want a marriage like everybody else in your relationship world? You want a second marriage like everybody else in your relationship world? You want to have pornography on your computer or maybe get caught like everybody else? You want to have the regret like everybody else you're going to school with who's lived experimentally sexually along the way, and now they have regrets that they're trying to cover up by bragging? Do you want do you want to be like everybody else there? You want to go through a long list of your sexual escapades when you meet with Mr. Right and Mrs. Right someday in the future and say, I just need to tell you this before we get married? Is that what we're after? Is that what you mean by being like everybody else? Let me kind of say this to you, and you can decide whether it's true, but I would suggest we don't want to be like everybody else. So honor God with your body. Your body was his idea, and sexuality was his idea. Make no mistake. What would it look like? You want to have great sex? Honor God with your body. Go to the one who made it and honor him with how you handle it. Because here's what God has said through the writings of Paul. What God has said in this area, and the reason he put it in the context of his suffering, death, and resurrection, is God looked down at you and God said, I think you're worth it. Yeah, even to the point, I'm going to send my son to pay the ultimate sacrifice because I think you're worth it. I know you don't think you're worth it. That's why you're laying it out for everybody who'll come along. I know you don't think you're worth it and trying to prove your own manhood by acting out in perverted ways. But God says, I think you are so worth it that I am willing to give you my son and go through all the pain related to that. So if I'm willing to do that, honor me with my gift to you. Tracking? Honor me with my gift to you. So in light of the conversation, in light of your past, your present, your future, in light of where you are at this station in life, what is the wise thing for you to do? Lord, I thank you for the morning. Thank you for the opportunity to have this valuable discussion with these folks. Thank you, Father, for giving us guidance in your word about how to handle such a difficult topic, it seems. Lord, I think it's difficult because it seems like the world's kind of hijacked this one. Man, Lord, there's nobody in this room had to be convinced that what the world was offering was a viable option. Unfortunately, it was a lot easy for many of us in this room to find that regret. And when I went through the thing on the board and we talked about there's nothing wrong with it, too many of us in this room began to feel uncomfortable, and little beads of sweat came across our brow and heart beat a little faster, and we started wondering about what texts were on our phone right now. We started thinking about that relationship with him, with her. And man, Lord, you were here when we talked about pornography. You heard this gasp in the room because we all know that wrestling match that's there. You can't hide from this. And so, Lord, I'm asking on behalf of these folks that you would come and heal us today. I ask you would heal us, not piling more shame or guilt, but heal us by teaching us how to honor you. Hey, listen, Some of you in this room, I just want to say, you're here probably because your sexuality has actually kept you from God all these years. And somehow you stumbled to this church today. And let me tell you what's happening. God has a plan for you, man. And God is calling you home. God is saying, hey, you're not alone in your sexual sin. This whole room's full of people. Don't let this be what keeps you from coming home. Some of you had stuff happen so far back and you feel you're too dirty, you're too less, you're never going to be good enough. That's a lie right out of the pit of hell. You do not have to own that. That's not true. In fact, if you read Scripture, Jesus called people directly out of settings like that, directly out of adultery, and says, hey, I'm not going to condemn you. You go sin no more. Don't you want that grace? Don't you want that forgiveness? That may be why you're here. So listen, if that's you, all you do is bend the knee. All you do is say, God, I'm tired of life in my own hands. You come be my Savior and Lord. Teach me what it means to honor you. And if you do that, tell somebody. Don't walk this path alone. That's what got you in trouble to begin with. You tell somebody you made the decision. Listen, I want to say one thing. Some of you in this service have just received a warning flag. God has just spoken clearly to you and said, back away from the edge. Where this ends up is not a good place. And I want you to notch this day down, write it in a journal, because this was the day God warned you. He allowed you to walk to the very edge of a very dark abyss and say, you see where you're headed if this behavior continues. Back away and honor me. Honor me. Oh God, heal. Heal all across the room. Encourage, restore, redeem, purify. And may this church be known as a people that don't want to be like everybody else. You're going to date our girls? It's not going to be like everybody else. You're going to come after our guys? Not going to be like everybody else. Those people are crazy. They're honoring God. May it be so. From singles, individuals, relationships, marriages, may it be so. This is a house where God is honored above all in your name. Amen.